Welcome to my official Week 4 college football recap. In this video, I'm going to go through all the top 25 games from this weekend and give some of my thoughts. And I'm also going to give my reaction to the updated AP poll after Week 4 at the end of this video. But let's start off with recapping the only ranked matchup from Friday night, and that was the game between number 22 Nebraska and number 24 Illinois. Luke Altmyer played a nearly perfect game on offense, and Illinois got the win in this game 31-24. The defense continues to impress, and they are a pretty good team defensively. This was an unfortunate loss for Nebraska under the lights. This might be a game that kind of wakes them up though, and I am expecting Nebraska to bounce back. I'm actually kind of buying Illinois now. I think they are a pretty good football team. And this was a really good win for Illinois on the road against a top 25 Nebraska team. Now let's move on to the Saturday games. We have number 1 Texas beating the brakes off of UL Monroe. Nothing much to say about this game. It's pretty funny, UL Monroe actually thought they had a chance in this game. And even after watching Arch Manning throw a pick right out the gate, they had no shot in this game. UL Monroe is a very bad FCS team, and Texas won this game 51-3. But surprisingly, Arch Manning threw 2 interceptions in this game. Ohio State managed to beat Marshall 49-14 even after a slow start to the game. Marshall managed to put up 264 yards of offense and score 14 points, but this Ohio State offense just has way too much firepower, and they continue to look very good offensively with new offensive coordinator and play caller Chip Kelly. Will Howard played a decent game despite the 1 interception. He went 16 for 20 for 275 yards and 2 touchdowns. So despite some of the early struggles, this was still a very good performance from the Ohio State Buckeyes, and they are looking very good. And then we have number 5 Ole Miss beating Georgia Southern 52-13. Jackson Dart put up another crazy performance. He leads the country in passing yards right now. This Ole Miss offense is playing out of their mind, and they are going to be one of the top offenses in the SEC this year. Trey Harris had a game of 225 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. I actually picked Georgia Southern to cover the spread on the road, but Ole Miss has been excellent against the spread this season, and they win another big game against a bad team 52-13. The next game was number 6 Tennessee beating number 15 Oklahoma 25-15. It wasn't the cleanest game from either one of these teams, but Tennessee's defensive line continues to look super dominant. They held Oklahoma to 1 yard a carry in this game. And even with Tennessee not playing their best offensive game, they still beat Oklahoma by double digits on the road, which was impressive. This game had all the eyes on it. Norman was hosting game day. I am very high on this Tennessee team. I think this is the most complete team Josh Heupel has had, and it's going to get them very far this season. Oklahoma, on the other hand, they're going to have a tough year 1 in the SEC. I will say they found something out of their freshman quarterback, Michael Hawkins Jr. We'll see if he replaces Jackson Arnold, but I'm still not expecting much from that offense this season because it all starts at the offensive line, and they do not have a good offensive line. This was a tough loss for Oklahoma, but Tennessee gets another big win for their resume, beating Oklahoma 25-15. And then we have the weird game between number 7 Missouri and Vanderbilt. Missouri is just not looking like a top 10 team at all right now, and they had to go into overtime to beat this Vanderbilt team. I will say Vanderbilt has done pretty good this season, better than they usually do. They beat Virginia Tech, and they're getting solid quarterback play from Diego Pavia. And they really fought in this game. They had a legitimate chance to beat Missouri, but their kicker really sold them at the end. Missouri's really not looking that great, but a win is a win, so I will give them that. This is back-to-back weeks. They managed to slip away in the end and beat a team by 1 score. And I do have some questions with that Missouri defense because they lost a bunch of production and they lost their defensive coordinator, Blake Baker. But regardless, Missouri beats Vanderbilt 30-27. Miami continues to roll against a pretty good group of 5 team in South Florida. I'm actually pretty high on South Florida, but Miami dominated them, beating them 50-15. Cam Ward looks like the obvious Heisman favorite in this game, and Cam Ward hit the milestone of 15,000 career passing yards in this game. It was a little bit of a slow start. It was only 22-15 at halftime, but Miami shut them out 28-0 in the second half. And that's exactly why there are 4 quarters played in football. The good teams always find a way to win the games when they should. I will say keep an eye on South Florida. They competed with Miami and Alabama for a while, and they are a team that returns a bunch of production from last season, and with Memphis losing to Navy, they could be a contender in the American Conference and maybe a sneaky group of 5 contender for the playoffs. I really like what this South Florida team has offensively, and they return a bunch of starters. This is a team on the rise with their head coach. Byron Brown is a pretty good quarterback and he had 250 passing yards in this game. But it definitely wasn't enough. That Miami offensive firepower is just way too much. Cam Ward throws for 400 yards in this game, and Horton, Restrepo, George, and Brown all keep going off. This is an insane offense that is really good. We also saw Penn State have a bounce back game against a mediocre Kent State team. They beat Kent State 56-0. There's really not much to say about this game. That offense really played well for Penn State. Drew Allar threw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. And they also dominated Kent State. They only held them to 67 yards, which was a very good defensive performance, albeit against a bad team. But still, this was a great sign to see if you're a Penn State fan because they had a big bounce back after that terrible performance against Bowling Green. So we'll see what Penn State does as they move into conference play, but that game against USC in a couple of weeks is going to be very important. But speaking of USC, they managed to get upset on the road against Michigan, 27-24. I picked USC to win and cover this game, but I should have been a little bit more smarter because I knew this Michigan defensive line was going to give that offensive line a ton of troubles. USC's offensive line showed concerns against LSU. They were able to get away with it against LSU because LSU's defense isn't anywhere near as good as Michigan's is. I really thought USC was going to take this game over in the second half. They actually kind of did. They really controlled the second half, but they had that one pick six that really cost them this game. USC outgained Michigan in yards, and I really feel like they should have won this game. But Michigan made the big plays necessary, and they ran for 300 yards on the ground. And what's crazy is the fact that they were able to win this game with only 32 passing yards. That is unreal. I still think USC is going to be a pretty good team. The defense is definitely better, no questions asked. But the thing that is a little bit concerning is their offensive line. How are they going to hold up against the good Big Ten fronts? I guess we'll have to wait and see, but USC has a very good coaching staff, and I think they will be just fine with the team they have. But this was a huge bounce-back win for Michigan, and it does keep them in the Big Ten title race. I don't know what was going on between number 12 Utah and number 14 Oklahoma State. It was a very boring and underperforming game, and Utah won the game 22-19. Oklahoma State's offense continues to be super inconsistent. I don't know what is going on. And Utah should be glad that they have a better backup quarterback this year than they did last year in Isaac Wilson. I think this win on the road without Cam Rising against a pretty solid Oklahoma State team really rises the stock of this Utah team. And when they get Cam Rising back and they are playing at their best, they are going to be very good. I really haven't bought into this Utah team much. I knew they were going to be a contender, but they weren't my favorite. But after yesterday, I really might buy into this Utah hype a little bit more because they do look pretty good. This is one of the weaker defenses they will be playing this year. I'm really not high on that Oklahoma State defense. I think this Oklahoma State team is a little bit overrated as a whole. But Utah really found success running the ball in this game. Bernard had almost 200 yards on the ground. Oklahoma State tried to make a comeback in the fourth quarter, but it just wasn't enough. Utah ends up winning the game 22-19, and this was a big win for Utah. Well, I actually had Kansas State on upset alert. And number 13, Kansas State just got absolutely destroyed by BYU 38-9. Absolutely everything was going BYU's way, and Avery Johnson isn't looking like a great quarterback. He looked good against Arizona, but he's very inconsistent and he needs to work on his passing game. I was really high on this Kansas State defense and that run game, but they are a little bit too one-dimensional offensively, and that is going to hold them back. So I am starting to realize that. But another thing I'm really starting to realize is that this BYU team is legit. Maybe they aren't going to win the Big 12, but I definitely think this is a team that has taken a step forward from last season. The defense has played really good. They haven't gave up a touchdown to a Power 4 opponent this season. They have been really good at forcing turnovers, and when BYU doesn't turn the ball over, they play really good. They have more skill position players offensively than I thought. And they do have a somewhat favorable schedule. They get Baylor and then they get Arizona. BYU could actually start 6-0. I am expecting Kansas State to bounce back. I like their head coach. They are a very consistent team most of the time. But this was just an embarrassing loss for Kansas State. I knew it was going to be a trap game on the road for Kansas State, but I wasn't expecting them just to not show up. This was embarrassing. I believe BYU scored like 31 points in the span of 6 minutes, and they completely dominated this game. They had some highlight reel plays, and they had a crazy kick return. Definitely go back and watch the highlights of this game. Pac-12 After Dark isn't a thing anymore, but Big 12 After Dark is going to be a lot of fun this season. And BYU beats Kansas State at home 38-9, and this was a huge win for BYU. LSU continues to look worrisome. They only beat UCLA 34-17, and it was tied at halftime. I think I am starting to figure out this LSU team. I think their offense has taken a step back and their defense has taken a step forward. They are more well balanced. But how good can they actually be? I don't know. I don't expect this team to make the college football playoff. But this year could be a step in the right direction for LSU. They have some great recruiting classes coming in. And if they can play good on both sides of the ball, they can be a contender in the future. UCLA definitely showed up to play in this game. I figured UCLA would cover the spread after that embarrassing performance against Indiana. Most of the time, Power 4 teams don't just lose back-to-back games by a ton unless they're completely terrible. And UCLA is definitely in the terrible conversation. But UCLA has more offensive upside than people think. I don't think they are going to be the worst Power 4 team, but they are definitely not going to win a lot of games this year. But regardless, Garrett Nussmeier has a very good game. Harold Perkins did get injured, but LSU did win this game 34-17. Another team that was looking worrisome for a while was Notre Dame, but they finally woke up and they beat Miami, Ohio 28-3. It was actually 3-0 for Miami, Ohio midway through the second quarter, but Notre Dame finally picked it up and they went on a great run in the second half. It actually started at the end of the second quarter with them scoring 2 touchdowns. They really got their run game going in this game, and I think they are kind of finding their offensive identity, but I don't know if it's going to be good enough to get them in the playoffs. The defense is very good, but they have a super tough test against Louisville next week, and I might actually pick Louisville to win that game. We'll see. But regardless, Notre Dame avoids the upset against another Group of 5 team, and they beat Miami, Ohio 28-3. We also saw number 19 Louisville take down Georgia Tech at home. I liked Louisville to win this game, and they did win it, and they covered. I am really liking this Louisville offense this season. Tyler Shough can really sling the ball deep, and I can admit I was not high on him this offseason, but he has absolutely proven me wrong. And if Tyler Shough can stay healthy and those receivers can keep doing what they're doing, this is going to be a very good Louisville team because they have the defense. Georgia Tech has a path to a bowl game, but they also have a brutal schedule, and I am interested to see what this Georgia Tech team can do the rest of the season. But keep an eye on Louisville. They could be a legit ACC title contender. I know everybody is kind of looking at Clemson and Miami right now, but honestly, I would trust Louisville more than Clemson. Clemson is just running up the score against bad football teams, and they also gave up 35 to NC State, which was kind of weird. I like Clemson. They are a top 3 ACC team, but the lack of them not using the portal might cost them. And I really think Louisville has the all-around better team than Clemson, but I could be wrong. I'm excited to see these two teams play in a few weeks. But that game is still weeks away, and Louisville manages to beat Georgia Tech 31-19. Iowa State continues to look better and better every week. They got a dominated win over Arkansas State 52-7. Their defense is actually one of the top defenses in the country right now if you look at the statistics. But their offense is starting to get going, and this is a dangerous Iowa State team that could make a run in the Big 12. A lot of people are forgetting about this Iowa State team, but I might actually pick them to make the Big 12 championship game soon if they continue to impress me. I knew this Iowa State team was going to be a team to watch out for. They return a bunch of production from last year, and they have a good quarterback. And this was a good win for Iowa State, beating Arkansas State 52-7. I just talked about Clemson a little bit ago, and they did beat NC State 59-35. This was really a great sign from their offense. They put up 59 points. They also put up 66 points against App State. They have really bounced back from that terrible loss to Georgia, and I will give that to them. I still need to see more from this Clemson team. They haven't played any good defenses outside of Georgia, and the lack of proven playmakers offensively could hold them back. I know their young receivers have looked incredible, but it is still early in the season, and they haven't played any good defenses outside of Georgia, and we saw what happened in that game. A team could have great performances and some people will overreact, but I definitely think this is going to be a better Clemson offense than last season, but I don't know if it's good enough to get them in the ACC title game. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Clemson does get their revenge from last season against NC State though, and they beat them 59-35. I actually had Northern Illinois on upset alert against Buffalo, and they outright lost the game. I knew Northern Illinois wasn't a top 25 team. I didn't even come close to ranking them in my top 25. And this is the game teams always drop. Definitely an unproven Group of 5 team like Northern Illinois. They were coming off a very emotional win against Notre Dame, and then they play a sneaky Buffalo team and they lost the game 23-20. And I say sneaky Buffalo team because they were not expected to be very good this season, but they have overexceeded expectations so far, and they could be a solid team in the Group of 5 this year. And if you want to talk about a sleeper in the Group of 5, look up Bowling Green, giving another ranked Power 4 team a run for their money. Texas A&M only beat Bowling Green by a touchdown. I picked Bowling Green to cover and I was right with this prediction. It will be interesting to see what this Bowling Green team does the rest of the season. They beat an FCS team, but they lost to 2 Power 4 teams. So I really can't take away a lot from those 3 games, but if they play the way they did against those Power 4 teams, they could be an 8 or 9 win team this year. They have some defensive upside, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this team can do. But Texas A&M does beat Bowling Green 26-20, and personally, I don't even think Texas A&M should be ranked, but that's just my honest opinion. And then, of course, lastly, we had the AP poll drop yesterday. There were some changes to this AP poll. Tennessee jumps to number 5 over Ole Miss. I definitely think that is justifiable. Ole Miss hasn't played anybody, and Tennessee is building their resume. Missouri drops down to number 11. Finally, they have dropped this team out of the top 10. Missouri shouldn't be ranked in the top 10. They shouldn't have been ranked in the top 10 last week after that game against Boston College. I just haven't liked what I have seen from this Missouri team to rank them inside the top 10. They are probably a top 20 or top 15 team, but I don't think they are as good as they were last season. We also have Michigan jumping up to number 12. I would not put them that high in my rankings, but that was a big win against USC, and USC is at 13 right behind them. And then you have LSU at 14, so you have the head-to-heads right there, Michigan beating USC and USC beating LSU. And then you have Louisville at number 15 and Notre Dame at number 16. Those 2 teams play next week, so that's going to be interesting. Illinois moves up into the top 20. This is huge for their program, and they could be a sneaky team in the Big Ten this year. And then, of course, you see teams like Oklahoma State and Oklahoma dropping down. Nothing surprising about that. But what about BYU getting ranked? I don't know if I'm going to rank BYU in my top 25. My rankings are more of a power ranking, but I'll definitely think about ranking BYU. But I think we need to see more from them. Boise State gets ranked at number 25. I think it's about time. This team has looked really good offensively, and Ashton Jeanty is a beast. But again, why is Texas A&M ranked? This team does not look like a top 25 team. They get rewarded for beating a trash Florida team. There were some changes to this top 25, but you guys let me know your thoughts on the new AP poll after week 4 down in the comments below. But that is going to do it for today's video. Let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you will love this channel because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing and also consider checking out my socials down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.